Jarrell Miller says that he is more intelligent than Anthony Joshua and that he's a warrior. He has questioned Anthony Joshua's claim of being from the streets because apparently he's learned a little bit about where AJ is from and says that, AJ's claims of being a thug are not true because of his home county's upbringing. He said here on the Radio 5 Live boxing show with Costello and Bunce, or podcast, excuse me, he said he is from an area not known for being tough. He's just talking himself up, but people love you being real. Now, I do have to back up what Jarrell Miller is saying here. Anthony Joshua is from Watford. Watford is definitely not known as a tough place. But with that being said, you could be from anywhere and turn out to be a tough guy. I mean, Muhammad Ali was from a lower middle class or middle class family in Louisville, Kentucky. And ain't nobody tougher than Muhammad Ali. He wasn't from the ghetto. He wasn't from the slums. Yeah, he was from the deep south in a time when America was still segregated and what have you. But in terms of poverty, he never knew about poverty. Right? He never knew about that. He never knew about being in situations on the roads, on the streets. Muhammad Ali never knew about nothing like that. But this is boxing. This is not a street fight. This is not a gang fight. You can't bring your guns into the ring. You can't bring your crew with you. You can't bring a knife with you. It's a controlled situation. Two guys, a ref, judges, an audience, both wearing boxing gloves. You can't use anything but your fists. Can't use elbows, knees, headbutts. You can't bite, eye gouge, none of that. It's a controlled situation. This is why I always say that this kind of old school notion that you need to come from some tough ghetto gang background to make it at the top level in boxing is a false notion. It's not true. It's never been true, actually. But it was just something, I guess, which sold well in the media. But the reality is, Anthony Joshua has been fighting top-level boxers in this sport since his amateur days. He's had legit wins in the amateurs, not just the controversial quote-unquote wins over people like Erislandi Savon and Roberto Camarel in the Olympics. No, he fought other people like Ivan Ditchko in the Olympics and had a legit win, had other legit wins in the Olympics, beat Roberto Camarel legitimately in the World Championships in Azerbaijan. Excuse me, made it to the finals of that tournament. So Anthony Joshua, in this controlled situation we call boxing, has lots of experience. He's been in there against elite guys. He's been thrown in at the deep end. If he was going to crack, he would have cracked before now. If there were any chinks in his mental armor, we would have already seen them, given the situations he's been through in terms of what the opponent can bring to the table. Now, the only question here for me is, will the environment affect Anthony Joshua fighting in New York? Because it is a very alien environment for him. I know he's done it in the past. In his amateur days, he fought around the world. But those days were a long, long time ago. So being in New York, a different environment, not having the crowd all screaming his name and rooting for him, will that affect him? Will it be difficult for him to produce his best performance under those circumstances? I personally think it won't affect him that much because I do think he's a level-headed, calm kind of character. And I'll give you an example of this. And this is where I really knew that Anthony Joshua, I was saying even before AJ turned pro that he was probably going to go on to do good things as a professional, okay? Because I was hearing about Anthony Joshua in the amateur circuit for, a long time, long before he went to the Olympics, and hearing good things. And then, of course, I saw him in the World Championships and all that kind of thing. But as a professional, Anthony Joshua has always kept this level-headed approach. And the best example of it, and the level-headed approach, which I think is vital to having long-term success at championship level in boxing, is having a level-headed approach, never being too high and never being too low. Okay? And an example of this would be the IFL interview that Anthony Joshua did in the dressing room after the fight when he won his IBF world title against Charles Martin. Go watch that interview. Because Coogans Cassius, who I love Coogans Cassius's work, I love IFL, I think they're great. But Coogans Cassius kind of has this typical British type of mentality, all right? And what I mean by that is British people love to celebrate. Like, they get extremely excited when they've achieved something, particularly in a sport like boxing or in football. When British people achieve something, over the moon, screaming and shouting, jumping up and down, it's incredible passion, right? You see that with British sports stars, British boxers in the past. When they win a world title, they're over the moon, they're doing backflips, they're out in the pub after the fight, celebrating for a whole month, drinking and partying and all this kind of stuff. They just can't believe what they've done. Whereas with Anthony Joshua, in the dressing room after the Charles Martin fight, Coogans Cassius was all excited, like, Anthony, you've won a world title. And Anthony was like, yeah, it's just a stepping stone. And Coogans couldn't understand. He was shocked. He was surprised by Anthony's reserved and muted reaction to winning the world title. He was almost disappointed. That's how it came across. Because Coogans, again, has the typical British hype mentality. When you've achieved something, you go over the moon, about it. Whereas Anthony was like, nah. My mentality stays calm. This is a nice fight to win, my first world title, but this is just the beginning. So I haven't made it yet. I'm not going to celebrate now. This is just a stepping stone. He had much bigger plans. See, so his mentality was different than most British fighters, if you notice. That right there was a great example of why Anthony Joshua is where he is and other British fighters aren't where Anthony Joshua is. It's only one reason, of course. There's also the talent and many other factors. And when I say other British fighters, I'm talking about British fighters who have never made it at championship level. British fighters who have never made it to, whatever Anthony Joshua's record is now and beating all the top level fighters he's beaten. Fighters who haven't done that, who haven't won world titles but have tried. British fighters I'm talking about, one of the reasons is because they don't have the right mentality. I hate to quote Tunde Ajayi, but dream it, believe it, become it. You have to walk like a champion. You have to believe it in your mind that you're, winning a world title. That's no big deal. I'm on to bigger and better things. That's the mindset that you have to have if you want to really be a top fighter in this game. Of course, there are some exceptions. There are some emotional fighters over the moon about winning a world title and they go on to have long title reigns. I guess Adonis Stevenson will be a very good example of that. But generally speaking, it's the level-headed fighters who, like Anthony Joshua says, are never too high and never too low. So when Anthony Joshua achieves something great, he doesn't get too excited. When something bad happens, he suffers a setback, he doesn't get too despondent. He doesn't get too depressed about it. He tries to keep himself right there in the middle. That's a dangerous man right there, right? Who's able to keep himself right there in the middle, not get too high and not get too low. That level-headed approach, right? Same like Floyd Mayweather. You see him with his fights when he achieves something great. He's not doing backflips and somersaults. In fact, I remember Customado, and I wonder whether Anthony Joshua, who is a big fan of Mike Tyson and Customado, I wonder whether he read or heard these words from Customado, because Customado once told Mike Tyson early on in Tyson's professional career. After Tyson had knocked somebody out, Tyson was jumping up and down, and Customado was like, "What the hell are you doing? What's wrong with you?" And Tyson was like, "What? I just want to fight." And D'Amato was like, "You're acting as though you're surprised that you won. What's wrong with you? We know we're going to win before we go in the ring. We don't jump up and down afterwards like we just won the lottery and we weren't expecting to win it. No, we already know that we're going to win the fight before we step in the ring. The result is a foregone conclusion. We're not shocked after the fight that we won." So he kind of, he took Tyson aside and he admonished him. He said, "No, you don't act shocked for winning the fight. You don't act, jumping up and down and over the moon. No, we knew this victory was guaranteed to us before we even stepped in the ring. It's our destiny to win." That was Costabado's mentality. So he was trying to teach Tyson, because Tyson was an emotional character. And indeed, Tyson's a good example, actually. Even though Tyson was fantastically talented physically, mentally, he needed a lot of coaching. He didn't have it naturally mentally. He had to be coached into the right kind of mentality. And as you see, Mike Tyson's career turned out to be a career of extreme highs and extreme lows because it was a reflection of his personality, because he was someone who couldn't keep himself right there in the middle. He was always up and down. Now, there was a time in his career where he was, at least when it comes to his boxing, he was keeping himself in the middle, and that's where he was performing at his best. But outside of that time period when he was emotionally up and down, and it's no good for long-term success. You might have short-term success being like that. For long-term success, you need an even keel. Stay right there in the middle. Don't get too excited. Don't get too depressed. Stay right there. And Anthony Joshua has that. He's had it from the very beginning. I think that's just who he is innately as a human being. I don't think that's something that really had to be taught to him in boxing. I think that's just what he has. And I'm expecting him to have that here against Jarrell Miller. He did, of course, in the Dillian Whyte fight a bit emotional there. That is the one exception where he did let it slip, and it nearly cost him with that big left hook. Will he let it slip here against Jarrell Miller? Will he come off his even keel and let Miller drag him into a dogfight? If he does, we could see something very interesting. And maybe that's what all this street talk from Miller is really all about, talking about grew up in a broken home. I think Miller is really trying to talk himself confident. I think he's already a very confident man anyway, but I think he's trying to talk himself some extra confidence by saying, I'm from the streets and he's not. I'm real and he's fake. He's trying to talk himself some extra confidence. The only way that it's going to work from a psychological point of view on Anthony Joshua is if Anthony Joshua buys into all that stuff. And the fact that AJ, felt the need to say that, these scars on my knuckles are from street fights and, all this kind of stuff, that kind of suggests that maybe he is buying into that street thing a little bit, that Jarrell, and trying to compete with him on a street level. He shouldn't. Because for one, he can't. Jarrell Miller definitely grew up in a way more rough environment than Anthony Joshua did, so he can't compete. And number two, he shouldn't compete because it doesn't matter anyway. It's a boxing match. It's not a street fight. It's not a gang fight. No one's bringing guns and knives into the ring. It's a controlled situation, and Anthony Joshua's fought in that controlled situation countless times before. So he doesn't need to worry about Miller's backstory and all this kind of nonsense. None of that's going to matter in the ring, right? So let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Is Jarrell Miller more intelligent than Anthony Joshua? Is he going to psych Anthony Joshua out? Is that what he means by more intelligent? Maybe he's not talking about the worldliness and knowledge and being well-read. I don't know. Maybe he's just talking about, from a psychological point of view, he thinks he can psych the guy out. Is that what he means by more intelligent? Is he right? How's this fight going to go down? Let me know how you guys feel in the comment section below. It's happening out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.